Well, we recognise, and I'm afraid this morning's news confirms that there is an absolutely tragic loss of life on both the Palestinian and the Israeli side. But I think it is important to remember this started with horrific murders on October the 7th. And if Hamas are hiding in these hospitals, then Israel has to do something about it. I think we can all just hope the situation resolves itself as quickly as possible.
OK. We're going to come to your autumn statement in a moment, but the politics of the past fortnight or so have been dominated to some extent by the outgoing Home Secretary and now the incoming Foreign Secretary. A cabinet meeting is going to be poorer for the absence of Mrs. Braverman?
Well, she made a constructive contribution when she was there. David Cameron, I think, will make an excellent contribution as the new Foreign Secretary. What the Prime Minister has done is surround himself with a team of people who will get the job done. And there's been, a lot of noise in Westminster. You've been following the scene in Westminster for many, many years, Trevor. This is actually quite normal to have these ups and downs. But actually what voters care about is, are the problems that they care about being solved? And the biggest concern for voters is the cost of living. This is the week that inflation halved, and we are making progress against those priorities.
Well, I want to come to that, but just very briefly on voters' concerns. The Prime Minister's made a very big deal of the Rwanda situation, or the Rwanda plan, I should say. The Supreme Court ruled the current version unlawful. Prime Minister says he'll change the law. Are you comfortable with that as a response to a legal ruling? Let's change the law.
Yes, that is our democratic right as members of Parliament. We made that commitment to the British people. And let's look at what's actually happening. Small boat crossings this year, down by a third. In the rest of Europe, up by a third. So we are making progress, but we haven't yet finished the job. And we've been very clear. We will do what it takes, because a government's job is to secure borders. We don't think the system at the moment is fair to the British people, and nor is it fair to the people who are being smuggled by these evil gangs. We should decide who comes here and not those gangs.
So we can expect to see some emergency legislation pretty quickly?
I think so. That's the plan. And indeed, a new treaty with Rwanda in order to overcome the obstacles the Supreme Court has said need to be resolved before this can be done lawfully. We will do it lawfully. And if we need to change the law, we'll do that. All right,
let's talk about what you rightly say most people are concerned about, which is economy, cost of living and so on. And let's put the statement that you're about to make on Wednesday in context. You've already said inflation's halved, hit the target. But the government debt's still nearly 100% of GDP, according to latest figures, and that's higher than it was when Mr Sunak said he'd reduce it in January. Retail sales figures are at their worst since the last COVID lockdown, and UK inflation remains higher, even though it's halved, than in the EU and the United States. And it's still well above your target, which is 2%. The situation's pretty dire, isn't it?
Of course there are short-term challenges, but the bigger picture is that having halved inflation...
That is the bigger picture.
I'm just about to give you the bigger picture, if I may, Trevor. The bigger picture is that having halved inflation, which was over 11% when Rishi Sunak and I took office, we have turned a very big corner, because high inflation is the one thing no economy can cope with. If you want to grow sustainably, you have to tackle that. That was an enormous challenge that we faced when we came in. And people said, it was going to be very easy, it was going to be mechanical that inflation would fall. We know that wasn't the case. And I think it's very important. You talked about borrowing. It's very important. I took decisions a year ago in the autumn statement, very difficult decisions, that put up tax, reduced spending. They had the effect of reducing our borrowing from what it would have been. And it's because we have got borrowing under control that we can now see inflation coming down. OK, I'm going to stop you there, because two things. First of all, inflation, which is still knocking on 5%, is not low inflation. It's still high inflation. It's more than double your target. Second, of course, you could have done things that made inflation worse, but actually,
Inflation's come down because the grocers have reduced prices, because the oil companies have reduced energy prices, and because the Bank of England has used its lever of interest rates. It's not your doing that inflation's come down, is it?
Well, I think if you listen to what the governor of the Bank of England says, he says it's very clear that to tackle inflation, you need the bank to do their job with interest rates, and they remain independent, as is right. And you need the government to make sure that fiscal policy, what we do with tax and spend, is consistent with that. And the biggest and the most important thing that we could have done in the last year was take those difficult decisions a year ago to get our borrowing under control. If you don't do that, then the markets say, OK, this is a country where prices are going to go up because they're pumping money into the economy with additional borrowing. We chose to take difficult decisions. But you know what I want to say to you, Trevor, because I do think it's important. You know, there is so much defeatism, declinism about the British economy. I think we have turned a corner. And I want to give you, I just want to tell you something that I don't think you know about, and judging from some of the comments that you've said, you know, we haven't just grown faster than Germany, France or Japan since 2010. But according to the IMF, when we get inflation down to the target 2% in 2025, we will grow faster than France, Germany, Italy going forward. And there are tremendous strengths in the British economy. And frankly, I know it's your job to scrutinise, but I also think it's important people at home know that actually we've got a lot we can be really proud of.
2025 is a long way off. And let's put this in context. I do know what you just said. German economy is flatlining or going into recession. So this is not a high hurdle to jump. But let's take
it is, because
take you at your word.
Take me at my word. That would be a nice change.
All right, let me take your word. Fiscal policy, taxes, and all of that. Your answer to the problems that we're discussing is growth. Michael Gove told me last month that he thought the priority for the autumn statement should be cutting taxes on work, income tax and national insurance. Is he right?
Well, I'm not going to talk about any individual tax cuts. You wouldn't expect me to, just
a
few days before an autumn.
Taxes on work.
Here is the principle. There is a big dividing line between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party because we believe lower taxes are essential for a high-growth economy. So we do want to bring down the tax burden, but we will only do so responsibly. Now, you've just been talking about the fact we've halved inflation. The one thing we won't do is any kind of tax cut that fuels inflation. We've done all this hard work. We're not going to throw that away. But in an autumn statement for growth, because I do want to turn the corner, I do want people to see, you know, the fact, for example, that our technology industry is double the size of Germany's and 3 times the size of France. If we're going to embrace those opportunities, we need to remove the barriers that stop businesses growing. And that's why this autumn statement will be focused on growth.
Well, let me not interrupt you and so on. Let me give you the chance to be clear. Because you said to a national newspaper yesterday, this point that you made, that we're at a turning point, and it was a time to show the path to tax cuts. Which way are you facing? Are you heading towards tax cuts or are you not?
I'm saying, what I actually said yesterday, my words were, we need to show there is a path to a lower tax economy.
We need to show there's a path. But that path might be quite long.
Well, you know, in the end, if we want to bring... You talked about personal taxes just now. If you want to bring down personal taxes, the only way to do that sustainably is to spend public money more efficiently. Yesterday, I was with my new Chief Secretary of the Treasury. I was meeting police officers who are saying they waste hours and hours every week filling out forms, redacting forms. I talked to ambulance drivers delayed at hospitals. We need to tackle those problems. Rome wasn't built in a day, as you know very well, Trevor, so these things take time.
Can we just stick with the tax question? There's a lot of talk about an inheritance tax cut. I'm going to assume that that is at least on the table for you. I know you're not going to tell me what you're going to do, but unless you say it's not on the table, let's just talk about that.
Trevor, everything is on the table in an autumn statement, and I'm afraid, as you know, much as I would like to give you a world first, I can't do that.
I'm not going to ask you if you're going to do it. I'm going to ask you to take a view about it. Can you explain to me how a cut in inheritance tax would encourage the economic growth you've just been talking about?
Well, I'm not going to talk about any individual taxes because that will lead to even more fevered speculation as to what I might do.
I'm just asking you.
I know, but I'm not going to talk about any individual taxes. What I will give you is a general view about tax. It's too high. A Conservative government wants to bring it down because we think that lower tax is essential to economic growth. Let me explain why I say that, because it is important. If you look at the most dynamic economies around the world, they don't tend to be in Europe. They tend to be in North America and Asia. Those tend to be places where the tax burden is lower. We recognise that truth. The Labour Party does not. Labour, let me just finish, because I think this is a very important point. Labour put taxes up every single one of their 13 budgets when they're in power. Conservatives cut taxes when we can, but we only do so responsibly. Yeah,
you put them up yourself.
Yeah.
We know about fiscal drag and all of that. OK, let's just ask this simple point. Tax burden is around about 37% of GDP right now. Will it come down before the next election?
Well, I will publish the figures from the OBR on Wednesday, and you'll see what they say about that. But I will answer this question this way. I want to bring down our tax burden. I think it's important for a productive, dynamic, fizzing economy that you motivate people to do the work, take the risks that we need.
I'm only hustling you because we're short of time, because you've got to go elsewhere. But the other plank in your statement is going to be about jobs, and you said that you want to bring 1.1 million people back into work. Now, over the past 4 years, you and your predecessors have been saying that. And we've had a plan for the jobs, the Kickstart scheme, a Way to Work campaign, the Restart scheme, a new midlife MOT, and the Universal Support Programme. 6 programmes which are all supposed to do the same thing. And here, I want to show you something. Here's the result of that. We can see how many people have are employed relative to December 2019, when you came into office. There are about 200,000 people less in work than when you came into office after these 6 programmes. What's new about this one that's going to change?
It's quite interesting, Trevor, that you...
I know, you're going to tell me COVID. You're going to tell me COVID. I know that.
No, hang on. Let me answer the question. You rather conveniently didn't mention that there was the once-in-a-century pandemic, and actually that the trend line is going up. There's ups and downs again. But let me tell you what's actually happened.
Let me tell you something that you might not know.
You tell me things and I'll tell you things. How about that?
Which is that even if we take COVID into account, actually, you'd probably have a couple of 100,000 people more in work. But the point is, you've had these 6 programmes in 4 years, haven't made any difference. What's going to be different about this one?
Well, I just profoundly disagree. If you look at the bigger record since 2010, unemployment is down by nearly 1 million people. We have succeeded in getting people back to work. But as we stand right now, after that once-in-a-century pandemic, we have a situation where every year we are signing off over 500,000 people onto benefits because of a sickness or disability, and saying they don't even have to look for work, even though many of them would like to work. Now, in an economy, and I'm Chancellor, where you have nearly 1 million vacancies, that is wrong. But I also think it's wrong for the individuals concerned. Much better... Let me finish. No, you need to let me explain. You need to let me explain, because you've asked me about these programmes. Let me explain what I announced with Mel Stride this week. We are going to spend £2.5 billion helping more than 1 million people with things like mental health support to help them get back into work. We think that is good for the economy, but also good for them.
But you're also telling them that if they don't get a job, then actually you're going to withdraw benefit from them. So there's a lot of stick here as well as this carrot.
Well, for people who aren't ill or don't have a disability, there's about 300,000 people who've been out of work for more than a year without any illness or any disability. We think it is fair to say, if you're not engaging with this process at all, if you don't engage for 6 months, we're going to close your case and stop your benefit. And I think taxpayers would expect nothing less.
All right. A point, we're coming to the end now. So there's a point at which, when you were last here, we talked about the churn, ministerial churn, and you told me that this was more or less just passing turbulence. So I thought we should update the chart. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at where we are. Well, this is interesting. We're up to 8 housing ministers. We're now up to 6 health secretaries. We have 5 immigration ministers. Big issues of, haven't had a change of chancellor, you'll be glad to hear. But this is more than passing turbulence. This is chaos, isn't it?
No. It is what happens in Westminster. And I can remember when, Tony Blair's government was rocked by the resignation of David Blunkett and Peter Mandelson. I'm actually old enough, Trevor, you can probably remember when Margaret Thatcher's government was rocked by the resignation of Michael Heseltine.
They were not...
No, I accept there is churn in Westminster. My point is that if you ask people at home what they care about, it's none of this stuff at Westminster. What they care about is cost of living, the NHS, where we've introduced a long-term workforce plan, and the economy, where we will see an autumn statement for growth.
People at home will be watching Mr. Nigel Farage in the jungle. When he comes back, after consuming kangaroo testicles and all the rest of it, will you welcome his return to the Conservative Party?
Nigel Farage is not a member of the Conservative Party.
But he might want to be.
And what I would say is that, what we will be doing is making progress on small boats, and that's something that he cares about and a lot of the people who support him care about.
Jeremy Hunt, thank you very much indeed.
Trevor, always a pleasure.